Are we streaming? Not quite yet. Okay, I will call the Southbury Board of Selectmen regular meeting, April 20th, 2023, to order at 7:05 PM. Can we have a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Keep moving the flags.
Yes, we moved the seating, we moved the flags, it's all confusing. First up, we have a presentation by Pierce Hollow Village. You've all got the letter from Pierce Hollow staff. Laney? If you could just push that button, and it turns green.
It turned green.
Now you're
Ooh,
on.
yes. My name is Laney Jedlinski. I've lived in town for 47 years, more than half of my life. Woo. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of Pierce Hollow Village. You all received the letter, and since we sent that letter out, we've made some revisions. Pierce Hollow Village has been working on the development of an affordable senior housing complex for almost 10 years. The 45 acres on Route 172, known as Personnel Village, has been promised to the town by the state. This would accommodate, or would have accommodated, 1- and 2-bedroom apartments to be built in 4 phases. Endorsement of the Pierce Hollow Village project has been given by the Selectmen. Zoning changes have been made. Endorsements by Neighboring Traditions Development have been given. Conceptual designs have been made, and much more. There's the conceptual design. Unfortunately, funding for affordable senior-only housing appears no longer to be available. The feds and state of Connecticut are focused on multi-generational housing. The town currently has 1.48% affordable housing, far below the state's mandate. We'd like to help correct that. As a result of the current obstacles, at this time, the Pierce Hollow Village Board of Directors feels that it has gone as far as it can go in this direction. The Pierce Hollow Village Board is prepared to change its original mission from developing senior affordable housing apartments to developing affordable housing apartments, multi-generational for use, which use, of course, would include seniors. We've been told the town does not wish to be responsible for managing a housing project. So Pierce Hollow Village, potentially in collaboration with Southbury Affordable Housing Alliance, could oversee to manage the property, including the acceptance of qualified tenants, much as Grace Meadows is currently managed. To move forward in this direction, we would need your endorsement of this change. Also needed is a revision of the language of the November 13th, 2013 resolution by the Board of Selectmen agreeing to lease the Personnel Village property for affordable housing, previously stated as affordable senior housing. With that in hand, we can request a change in the language of the state legislation, Bill number 1323, to allow the property to be given to the town for affordable housing, eliminating the word senior. The $1.5 million of ARPA funds allocated by the town for the remediation of the property would be used exactly as intended. We are aware of numerous sources of funding for affordable housing, and that the Department of Housing, the State Department of Housing, is in favor of a change in this direction. In summary, Pierce Hollow Village is seeking your approval to change the use of the promised 45 acres from the development of senior-only affordable housing to the development of multi-generational affordable housing, which of course, again, would include seniors. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the presentation?
That's my presentation. Any
Very-
questions?
I do have a question.
Yes.
In the statute, and forgive me that I'm not familiar with 1323, does it break down, what's the limit on the number or percentage of seniors that would be permitted? So when you say multi-generational, I know obviously this town, we're very much concerned with our senior population and making sure that there's opportunities for them. How much restriction is there in legislation currently as far as how many, what percentage of the residents can be seniors?
I don't know.
Okay, good, we'll find out.
The current bill, 1323, that gifts the land to the town is specifically for senior affordable housing
Oh, I see,
only.
understood.
There is so much more that would come, that needs to be done, but doing anything prior to knowing that the selectmen are in favor of us moving forward with multi-generational housing on that site would be possibly wasting our time.
Understood.
Any other questions?
Laney, well, first of all, thank you and all the members of the board for all the work you've done for the last 10 years. There's been a tremendous effort and many, many hours spent, and it's gone through all the boards and whatnot, and the whole town has been behind you and rooting for you, and you know, it's unfortunate the way this is all panned out from the funding perspective, because the town is very much in favor of using that property for that purpose. So when you talk about transitioning to multi-generational, has there been any, is it just general, like multi-generational? Has there been any discussion about whether funding would be available if a portion, like if it was multi-generational, but a portion of the properties were set aside for senior only? Or is that just sort of off the table completely, and the only senior component would be as part of, you know, other family structures?
From everything that I've read, and my knowledge base is, it's either all, everybody together, or nothing. There is no funding for senior-only housing that we can access. There is funding for senior-only housing. However, in order to obtain that funding through HUD, we have to raise 80% of the funds necessary before we could even make application to HUD. Because of the position in this particular state, we cannot access any public funds. The Department of Housing controls the access to almost all the funds in the state through the questionnaires that we would have to fill out. And there's a point system. Even if it never said senior only, the points are geared to 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom. And without having at least a third, and a third, there is no way we would get the point count necessary to even make us to where we could apply for anything else. I hope that makes sense.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, if you could limit it to 2 minutes, please come up, state your name, and give the public comment.
I have a question.
You have to make public, if you would like to make a statement, you could come up and give it, go ahead.
I'm not sure. Did it work?
It picks you up pretty well, you can leave it up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're fine, you're fine. It's pretty sensitive.
As long as you can see me over the podium, I'm good. Okay. My name is Victoria Thomas. I am deaf with a cochlear implant, and I'm the first person to graduate Region 15 schools 100% completely deaf. I was refused an application with Heritage Village Disabled Housing Option in 2008 because I had my baby boy. I was told they would have accepted him if I was already living there, then had him, but I couldn't move in without him. Years later, I found a job to help us financially. I looked at an apartment within my budget with my realtor in Southbury, but that apartment was so dilapidated, the building floor was a literal trampoline. I had applied to low-income housing in other towns where the wait list was 7 years or more. I overlapped the sex offender list in places in a city within my disability income to rent according to Zillow, and they were not as safe for my young son and I. Mobile homes were not allowed in Southbury or Middlebury, so that was not an option. I tried to get a mortgage in Newtown Savings Bank in Newtown, and the man with the slick hair who told me to come back with my parents or my husband, and we would consider a mortgage application, not knowing I am divorced and told my parents were passed. Word of mouth from a former classmate of mine told me Kevin Bennett was building a new low-income apartment, and I applied for it sight unseen, and I got it. It took me 10 years to get to that point. My son is almost 15 years old. I pay 60% of my income for rent, more than most people pay for their mortgages. I am the great-granddaughter of the former Southbury Constable Michael P. Klesitz and granddaughter of Elmer Alex Janrock, former board member for Southbury, who carved a lot of what Southbury is today. I want to live where my family made a home for their legacies. It has to be affordable, obtainable, and non-discriminatory, and that would be affordable housing. The current system in place is meant to shuffle out the poor, disabled, single-family household, and that needs to change now. Affordable housing is needed for more than 30% of Southbury. It needs to be done.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Hi, I'm Sharon Word, president of the Southbury Affordable Housing Alliance, or SAHA for short. I'm going to ask you to step outside your comfort zone and imagine what the lives of hundreds of our fellow residents have invisibly been going through for years because they're paying more than 30%, some 50 to 60% of their income on housing. Stress, bringing on chronic sickness and hospital visits, eating poorly, wearing a hat inside the house in winter because they can't afford to turn up the heat, food and med rationing, zero or puny rainy day savings, and not being able to spend on luxuries in town like holiday gifts or entertainment, which, by the way, hurts our economy. Working hard in lower paying jobs or retired yet volunteering in town, they make our community thrive. I think our town owes them housing they can afford, the same privilege you and I enjoy. They're Southbury constituents, and we have a moral obligation to provide homes suiting their budget, just as we provided homes for those earning higher incomes. It's what a democracy does. It's what SAHA will do. Now that Pierce Hollow Village and SAHA are collaborating to create affordable housing on Southbury Training School land promised to PHV by the state, we need to get started faster than greased lightning. Connecticut's best affordable housing consultant, David Berto, is also our consultant, that is SAHA's consultant. And he tells us that we can begin pre-development on this project when we have a word of intent from the state legislature and the BOS that the change in wording from senior only to non-age restricted affordable housing will be made in the respective legal documents. We know our state representative and legislature supports affordable housing. So we're beseeching you now to give us your word of intent this month. All the towns around us, except for Oxford, have 2 to 5 times the percentage of affordable housing than Southbury, which is a larger town. So we need to catch up for the sake of hundreds in town, Torrey, from whom you just heard, being one of them, and there are hundreds more. Thank you very much for your time.
Is there any other public comment?
Good evening. I'm Isabel Burke. I live in Heritage Village. I formerly lived in New York State for I don't want to tell you how many decades, and we had a very similar problem. But in one town that I lived in, they made a decision to support affordable housing. It made a huge difference. It meant my daughter could actually live in the same county as I could. It meant that my grandson could go to college in the same county that I lived in. And I think our younger people need the opportunity to live in this wonderful town. We have recreation, we have beauty, we have education, we have top schools. Why are we not taking this wonderful opportunity to open it up to people who would thrive here and add to our community in so many ways? So again, I really, really hope that you will see fit to open up this housing to all ages. There's a lot of people that love our town that would love to join our ranks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Barbara McClure, live at 28F Heritage Village. I had prepared remarks, but I have to tell you, I'm so moved by the previous speakers that I'm just going to speak extemporaneously to you. I'm a former educator, and I so applaud the years of devotion that Lainey has contributed to the Pierce Hollow Project, and seeing Sharon Word and thinking, oh my goodness, when you hit a brick wall, sometimes that's the end of the story. But in this case, it's not the end of the story. So the brick wall now had to be surmounted or circumvented, but they have found a way to partner, to work together, to really make this work not just for seniors, but for everyone. There's a marvelous book, short, written by an 86-year-old Swedish author whose name is Magdalena Magnusson, and it's called Aging Exuberantly. I shared a bit of it recently at Heritage Village, and what she talks about, 2 of the things she talks about to age exuberantly for seniors. One is to hang around with younger people, which a development like this would afford them. And I think not only with young people, but older people, seniors, would benefit as well. And the other was for seniors to say yes, to embrace life, and to move forward in a way that is, in some cases, taking a risk, but opening things in a way that we think, oh my goodness, how is this going to change us? But I think from what you've heard in the personal story that you heard, it would give people such an opportunity to interact with one another, different ages, different backgrounds. We would learn and grow, be inclusive, and be overall a much better town for us to live in, those of us who are here, and for new people who might come. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment?
Good evening, Ed Edelson, 609B Heritage Village. Just want to say, as a former first selectman, I had the honor of working with the Pierce Hollow Village Board, and quite honestly, we were all quite amazed how quickly things went at the beginning and how we were able to get the legislation to go through And it looked like even the remediation was going well, the historical work was going well, and then we did hit this brick wall when we realized the town was between a rock and a hard place. The legislation happened when senior housing was seen as a good idea, and then by 2015, when Laney and I and others went up to talk to the Housing Authority, they said their views had changed. 90% of governing is showing up. We need to have you folks show up in the legislature and show your support for what they're asking for. This can't happen by them alone, is my opinion. It's only going to happen if the town leadership shows that they are 100% behind this. Otherwise, we'll be 10 years from now and back here with a very similar meeting. Please support these people. Thank you.
Any other public comment? You made it.
Finally.
But there's more in the wings, so.
Oh, okay. I'll be brief. My name is Daniel Sternthal. I live in 10 South Ridge Road. Just moved into town recently. And I want to tell you something from a personal level about affordable housing. I came from that environment. I lived in the Bronx. I truly believe that the benefits of affordable housing become very obvious to me as growing up in a neighborhood that was multicultural, not rich, but the roof over their head was guaranteed. My parents were not rich, but they swore on a couple of things. We have food, have clothing, and your kids are going to go to college, my brother and myself. And they kept their promise. There are several compelling examples in favor of affordable housing, and I just want to share a few with you. But before I do that, I just want to tell you that we have a son. I have a fiance who has a son. He works locally. He became a father recently, and he needed a place to live that he could afford. First thing he did is, and we live in Southbury, we take care of the baby, and he needed to live close by. Couldn't find anything. Went further and further and further, and a few months ago, we ended up in Derby. Finally found an apartment in Derby to be able to live. Cost him, he works here, cost him more to travel, more car wear and tear, and he doesn't see his daughter as much as he should. One of the things that I think affordable housing does is I think it promotes social equality. It ensures that people of all income levels have access to living conditions that are decent. It helps promote social equality and reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. The friendships that were created for myself and my family in their environment have shown to me what decent affordable housing means for people trying to live a good life, raising family and becoming educated. It can help reduce homelessness by providing a safe, stable environment, conditions, and for those who cannot afford market rate housing. This can also help reduce the strain on homeless shelters and other social services. I think we support economic growth if we allow affordable housing to really come up to the full percentage of our required by the state. We can support general economic growth of a community by providing stable housing for workers, allowing them to live closer to their jobs, and reducing commuting time and costs, as I've seen it firsthand. This can increase productivity and provide highly needed services in all neighborhoods. Immigrants to the United States, my father included, became a carpenter and was highly sought after for custom cabinet work in New York City. My mother became a seamstress right in the apartment and opened a business for designing and manufacturing custom suit for the Wall Street crowd. It was fun. They decided my brother and I will attend college, which we did, and all planned and executed from a stable, rent-controlled, affordable apartment in the Bronx. Affordable housing can have positive impacts on health and well-being. For example, people who live in a stable, affordable housing are less likely to experience stress and mental health problems associated with housing insecurity. I cannot stress enough the importance of this one issue. Stress can kill. Having no knowledge of where you live in another week or so, or can't even afford to pay the rent, is really miserable. I saw it in my family.
We limit to 2 minutes.
Okay.
If you have that, you can send it to me, okay?
Sure, I will.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Hello, everybody. I'm John Guerin. I live at 327 Hulls Hill Road in Southbury. It's very hard for me to come up here after everybody is addressing the need for better housing in the town. But I'm here tilting at windmills. I am on the Historic Committee, Historic Committee District 1, and I want to register how hard we have worked with the residents in that district to preserve the historic nature. And then last week, in celebration of 350 years of having the Kingsland, we encased it in aluminum siding, is what we call it, or whatever, aluminum, excuse me? Guardrails. I can't tell you, I don't understand how the Historic Commission wasn't consulted with that. And I will tell you that 350 years we're celebrating this town, and that's what we do this year to preserve our heritage. And I have lots of other examples, but after listening to people talk about no housing, but I really want to object, and I'd really like to know how the Historic Commission's no one was consulted on that. It's completely ruined the vista of driving in the historic district.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Hi, my name is David Brenner. I live in Heritage Village, 45A. This is the first time I've ever spoken in any kind of gathering like this, so I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you. And I'll keep it brief. I think we have an opportunity here. We just came to Heritage Village, my wife and I, back in October, and we feel so lucky to be here. And we feel that we're so proud of our new community and everything that it is. But I know that my kids couldn't afford to move here, and I know that their friends couldn't afford to move here. So I think we have a real opportunity to be proud of our village now in a new way, to bring in affordable housing. And I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Is there any other public comment?
Kathy Summers, 148 Georges Hill Road here in Southbury. I was born and raised here, and from 1956, when I was born, so go ahead and do the math, everybody, until 1986, I lived in my family home. And when I moved out, there was nothing to rent in Southbury. So I started moving closer towards where I worked in Danbury, and I ended up renting in Brookfield. When I had saved money enough to want to move back and have a home here, I couldn't afford to live in Southbury. So for 12 years, I bought a condo and lived in Woodbury, simply because I couldn't afford one here, even though I'd been born and raised here. I lived there for 12 years, saved money the whole 12 years so that I could eventually move back. So when we talk about affordable housing, it's so much more than just for young people. I am on a lot of volunteer committees in town, and I see a lot of the struggles that seniors have with food insecurity, for electricity, for their heat, for everything. We stock little free pantries around town, and I see the people that go there. So affordable housing is so much more than just intergenerational. It's affecting everybody, whether you're a family that can't afford to move here or whether you're a senior that lives here now and is struggling to be able to stay. So it's something that I feel very passionate about, which is why I got on the Pierce Hollow Village board, and while I'll continue to work towards this for the town. Thank you.
Thank you. It'll pick you up.
Christine Edelson, 609B. I had a whole prepared statement, but so many things have already been said. But I think this is a wonderful opportunity to bring these two organizations together to work on this project in a way that they've both been working really hard. Pierce Hollow Village people have been working about 10 years, and Southbury Affordable Housing Alliance has been working a shorter time, but both have been putting their heart and soul into it. And so if we could do something as our governance here to make that happen, I think you'd be really proud of yourselves, and speaking up is so important. I work at the food bank, and I see how people are really struggling who live in our town. They're not coming from elsewhere. They live here. And if this could help them to live somewhere where it wouldn't be such a burden, that it might alleviate some of the need for our other systems, whether it's the needy fund or the fuel bank and things like that. So just think about how many people you could help, and there may be friends and relatives of yours that might want to come and live here and be part of our wonderful community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Is there any other public comment? Just made it. I'm like an auctioneer, going.
I'm Harvey Besson. I live here in the village. I'm not here to talk about the benefits of affordable housing. Everybody else has done that much better than I could. But I'd like to share an experience that I had living in another town. And that town did not meet the state's quota for affordable housing. That sets the stage. I lived on the main street of that town, and about 200 feet from my house was a beautiful old historic restaurant. And the restaurant and the parking lot took up about 2 acres. The family that owned the restaurant decided to sell. And they said they were going to sell it to a builder. So we have 2 acres, and the builder was enacting, I think it's Act 820J.
830G.
830J, close. And he was going to put up 79 units on those 2 acres. And all sorts of committees went to the town and complained, and we went there with torches and pitchforks. And the town said, nothing we could do. That builder does not have to follow local zoning regulations, any type of regulations. He was able to jam in 79 units. It wasn't age restricted, so there was probably going to be 79 children. The whole thing was a fiasco, and I would like to not have that happen here in Southbury. It was difficult enough the first time. I am hoping that this town can raise the amount or the level of affordable housing so that a builder can't come in here and just do whatever they want. It was a very nasty experience.
Thank you. I saw someone else getting up for public comment. Is there any other public comment? Is there any other public comment? Is there any other public comment? Okay, we'll close that portion of the meeting. You have your announcements and correspondence in front of you. You also have your reports. On G, we have a consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Can I have a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion on the consent agenda?
I'll just say one thing. Usually we don't comment on these, but we have a resignation from a longtime member of our Board of Finance. Dick Hill served on our board for nearly 20 years. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank him for his service to the town. And I'm sure his voice and perspective, maybe not his style, but his voice and perspective will certainly be missed, especially during budget time. So I'd like to thank Dick for his time on that board.
Yes, Dick did a great job. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it carries. Minutes of April 6th of 2023. Can I have a motion to approve? John? Thank you.
Wasn't here.
Wasn't here. Second. Motion made and seconded. A discussion on the minutes. Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And it carries.
I abstain.
Justin's abstaining. Okay. Transfers? You lost your place? That's okay. lost all your pages. All right. Anybody would like to sing? Tell a joke? The technology gods. Okay. I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the police transfers as presented.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Made a second. Any discussion on this? We have new office, I think it's self-explanatory. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And it carries. Next is RFQ for construction, equipment, and rental services. Of course, this is what those who might not know, we go out to bid, we take a look, and there's a spreadsheet, and depending on what the project is, we figure out what combination that the contractor carries that would be the least expensive, and we go from there. It's just as an update for the work. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second? John, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that carries. Unfinished business, we're waiting for the pool survey to come back. I think hopefully we'll have that next week, or not next week, next meeting. I just want to keep it on the agenda for, we don't lose it.
Jeff, excuse me, before we start new business, can we add Pierce Hollow to new business so we can discuss what we heard tonight?
If you want to make a motion and put it on, you have to make a motion.
Can I make a motion to add Pierce Hollow Village to the agenda under new business number 3?
I'd need a second for that. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of adding Pierce Hollow Village to the discussion under new business, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It carries. Let me write this down, or I'll forget to go right by it again. Okay. Under new business, summer's coming. As you know, we always have the parking issues. We had the town attorney look into, and what he did was look into how our property at Little York Road and Little York Park, and also the boat launch, and how that was procured. And that has a lot to do with whatever restrictions. So it's his opinion, it was town money. If you use federal money, if you use grant, some other stuff, it could you might not be able to limit it. So essentially, we can restrict the parking, if we would like, to resident parking only. If that's the choice, then we're gonna have to do a couple things. We're gonna have, one, come up with some kind of system, and what pops out is like we have the permits that that are for using our transfer station. And one of the things I would say is if you're gonna do that, it should be required to be in your window. There are people who get a temporary pass, and I don't think that's what we're looking for here. If you don't wanna put it in your window, that's too bad. It has to be on the window, would be a ticketing system. There's very little parking. Our attorney took a look and said, very little parking down in Little York. And, well, yeah, but to me, that should be parking for the town residents. And if we have, we've gone up and down with no parking up and down, that won't change because it clogs up the roads to get people. There's a house down there, people living in it. But I would say that probably would be what I think we could work on and get those two. And the boat launch, we're gonna put a new dock in. That's coming, being put together. And, it can get a lot of people. I know there are people up in that area are saying, geez, we're trying to get in there, and it's a lot of people from around town. And then, of course, we're gonna have to have our police patrol it and give tickets and put up signs. So that's what I've been working on. The property on River Road, virtually impossible to restrict. There's just state parking, state property. We've restricted a lot of it for safety purposes with no parking on that main road because it's just, it was difficult, and we've shrunk the parking across from that piece of property, limiting it. And there's not a lot we can do that, and it's also federal property, so we can't really do much. It's just I think, frankly, a cross we're gonna have to bear and deal with. So this is open for discussion on what this board thinks we may pursue on that. Any comments?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this was a huge topic for us last summer, and a lot of our residents had a lot of concerns. I live in the Purchase area of town, so I'm very close to the boat launch. And, I went through several times and I saw how crowded it was. And there were folks with New York plates. And, one of the concerns that I had is, even from a safety perspective, there's only so much room to be able to navigate boats in and out. And actually using the launch itself, there were, folks playing in the water there, and it is concerning, particularly when you're moving things like large boats with propellers, when it's so congested that somebody could get hurt. So I'm a big proponent that we start having a way to do this. In Roxbury, right over the border where Roxbury Falls is, it's very clearly marked residents only. And I don't see any reason why we're not doing the same a mile away. There's a variety of things there. So I think this is something that we should do. I think we also already have that sticker in place. If they have a transfer station sticker, it's good for both. And I think it's a very easy thing for us to execute. And I think it's definitely high time after what we saw last summer.
John?
I think the idea of relabeling that transfer station sticker or something that just says Town of Southbury is an easy fix. Could identify the cars that are parked at the boat launch or the other town parks if need be. I think would have to be the problem that happened last summer, and the complaints and the issues are all about the parking that's off of those spaces. So further along from the park on Little York or along River Road there. And I think there's got to be an additional study or something that could alleviate that parking problems also.
On River Road?
Along near where the water ski community is now stationed.
Okay.
Palm Beach.
Would you like, could you spearhead that, look into it?
Sure, I'll give it a
Okay.
shot and see where it goes. But I mean, totally supportive of, making those stickers so that they're more for town-wide, and then we can implement where we have parking problems to at least, so my one curiosity would be, does that also limit who can use the actual ramp? Or are we creating more of a problem where people are gonna go in, dump their boat or dump their equipment, and then go out and park up on the town road or the other roads that are in that area, at least in the boat launch area? So if we limit it to town resident parking only in that lot, is that gonna just push others out onto the street?
Anything's possible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that road is so dang tight. I don't know that you could fit a car anywhere. But no, I definitely understand that concern, and I think there's probably opportunity that if we did see that, to have no parking signs, but I can't, that stretch of roadway there is not only windy but very narrow. I can't imagine a vehicle could safely tuck in almost anywhere in walking distance of the boat launch itself.
But the point being, but possibly, is not only that it's no parking, but no use. And I don't know if that's what you're going at also.
So I think the question too is we'd have to also look and see if we would have to do an ordinance for this. I'll check with Tom, our town attorney, about how, I don't think you can just decide, we have to have something in place. So we'll take a look at some of the other municipalities, find out what we can do, hopefully have it for the next meeting. And if it has to be an ordinance, I think we can
that could be in place before the summer.
Yeah.
So
And then-
I definitely think we should move in this direction and, I understand what John's saying. We should continue to evaluate ways to improve all the issues, but I think we should try and address the issues that we absolutely can. And there are identified issues that there is a potential solution to. So I think we should put a plan together, move in that direction, and, try and execute on it at the next meeting.
Do you think this would be, this other parking down by River Road, do you think this is something that's been talked about in the strategic plan? I do know that strategic planning will be coming, I'm hoping, with a good presentation at the next meeting. I thought it would be this one, they're getting it together. Perhaps, John, this would be this would be something to strategic planning people, because I think it's gonna take quite a bit of, we've all been struggling with this, let's be honest.
I agree with you. I think we should ask them to help us look at this project over the long term, because we recently got the news that the Rochambeau Bridge project is ahead of schedule. It's basically decked. They're going to open up the other side at some point this year. It's moving ahead more quickly. I think that also means that the staging area that they're using off of exit 13 is more quickly going to be turned into another parking lot, correct?
When they're done, it's state property, it's just,
But that was in their plan. Am I remembering that correctly
Yeah.
from years ago when we saw the?
they were gonna I think they were gonna put a commuter lot at
Right.
one time right there, but there was a well there. There's a community, Oakdale Manor has a community well near there, and I think there was some issue with that. But this is gonna open up a lot more area. Now, whether they're gonna do more commuter parking lot, I don't know, because our commuter parking lots are not that busy anymore, I think just because people are working from home.
Yep.
So I'm not sure how much they're gonna wanna put into it.
Because if it does become a parking lot of some kind, that is state or federal property, we're basically just gonna have to figure out how to manage
Right.
the people traffic, because we're not gonna be able to stop it. So I definitely think we should get these guys on the issue and see what they can learn and what they can propose. And in the interim, every place that we can restrict, I think we should at this point. And I think Roxbury is a good example.
So I would, I think,
It's one thing if they were coming in and taking everything they brought with them, but we've seen the condition
That's not
after
happening.
these big weekends, and it's
I mean,
it's just
that's-
unacceptable. It's
And also,
unacceptable.
beyond that, like, I've heard of folks that have gone to use it, and it's full. They load
Yeah.
up their boat, they trail there, they can't get in to turn around and drop, and their weekend is, their weekend plans, and they're the taxpayers of this town, they're the folks that we represent, so.
yeah, and I've actually gone to these parks on the weekend on my own, talked with some of the people that are there, and I've expressed to them, I said, it's not that we mind you being here, but could you please take your garbage, take it with you? And I'll say one thing that warmed my heart one time, at Little York was, there was a young family, husband and wife, a young child, a grandmother, and they were walking out with big bags, one of each hand, of garbage, and they had said, this isn't, they weren't from Southbury, and I'm like, that's all we're asking, that you, it's unfortunate, but, and now that and especially now we're gonna put the new boat dock in there. So what I'd like to do is, if we could, Justin, you're on strategic plan.
I'm the liaison, yes.
Liaison.
Yep.
And John, maybe, I think this is, so I would entertain a motion from this board tonight to ask the Strategic Planning Commission to work on the Town Park, River Road parking issue, because that is part of the strategic plan we've accomplished a lot of, and that's what I think we're gonna find when they come here, there's been a lot accomplished.
Better use of our waterfront,
Water.
was the language, I think, something like that.
Right.
That's certainly in the document, and I think that group is looking for some guidance and
They-
looking for projects, and I think this is a good
tasks.
project that's meaty, that, they can tackle, spend some time on.
It's perfect.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Made and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of having the Strategic Planning Commission work on the parking issues on River Road and that area to come to some conclusion of what we might do, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried, and I will relay that message. Or could you relay that message?
I sure will.
The liaison, that would be great.
And then on the other issue that we can tackle immediately, you're going to talk to town council, and maybe
Town
we
council.
might have if we need an ordinance, we might have a draft at the next meeting.
Yep. Okay. Anything else on that? Next is the Housatonic Valley Health District. You've had some information in your packets on that. So the district has added and voted to add another municipality, Sharon, Connecticut. Sharon is separated quite a bit by by any other member district. I have voiced I'm not saying speaking for the Board of Selectmen, but I kind of thought I was, that we did not want any additional towns added to this district until we got it stabilized. And we have concerns expressed by our planning department about this. I also have some other information I just got. I'll read it to you from our land use enforcement officer. And he wrote that to me on 4/20/23, I attempted to contact the Housatonic Valley Health Department at 77 Main Street North, Southbury, in order to understand how they permitted a pool from a hand-drawing map dated 8/26/1993. I placed 2 phone calls at 9:42 a.m. to the help desk, as well as the community health nurse supervisor. Unfortunately, I was unable to get anyone to answer the phone, so I visited the department at 77 Main Street North. Upon arrival, I spoke with a woman at the front desk. I introduced myself and requested to see the file for the property in question for review. After being supplied the file, I reviewed and found the map that was submitted for the pool was the same map that was utilized back in 1993 for the approval of the septic system. This map appeared to be hand-drawn and not to scale. When I inquired as to whether a site inspection was performed by the sanitarian to determine the distance to the pool on the map, the woman stated she did not know. And when I asked if it was standard procedure for a sanitarian to perform a site inspection for a pool permit, she stated that she did not know. She went on to state that she was not normally at the front desk and was filling in for someone that day. When I asked if there was anyone in the department that could answer my questions, she stated that there was not. She went on to state that Joe Kometz and AJ Creasy were both out at site inspections and could be reached by contacting the cell phone numbers listed on their business cards. When I asked if they are responsive to phone calls, she stated that if they were in the field, they would likely not answer. But I left a message. I would be contacted shortly. At 10:21 a.m., after arriving back to the land use office, I attempted to contact Joe Kometz. However, his cell phone went directly to voicemail. I proceeded to leave Mr. Kometz a voicemail requesting a call back to clarify the question I had regarding the approval. So there's a pool that's installed. Long story, permits have not been issued, but no measurement, to my knowledge, of what was going on. I also have some from the Southbury Volunteer Fire Association Ladies Auxiliary. They are trying to get their permits, get things set up for their spooktacular. They're pretty quick on this stuff. They're not serving any food, and it's just wrapped candy. And one individual at the health department, I have attached the temporary food license application, which is the correct form for you to complete for your event. Thank you and have a great day. And then separately, the Joe Kometz, you can do both so we can have them for the record. No fee, but they're not serving food. It's candy. It doesn't seem to, why they would need permits. To that point, I still don't know if the health department has hired and has a sanitarian, they have a sanitarian. If they have a second sanitarian that can sign off like Joe. We have gone from a sanitarian in the Paparoga Health District with 3 towns, and we've basically doubled the size, and I'm not sure we've got enough staff with the addition of this other town. And the thing, this town is quite a ways away. Another thing that concerns me is there is a minutes. There are minutes in Sharon, Board of Selectmen's meeting, there are minutes, and what these minutes state is that on the date of this meeting, that there was a vote taken to admit Sharon into the health district, and that they could vote to join the health district. The vote had not taken. There had not been a vote taken. So I'm kind of concerned is how would someone make a statement at a Board of Selectmen's meeting saying there was a vote taken by the board, the health district, if it hadn't taken place? I'm trying to find out who may have said that. I asked if, I just sent an email off to find out. So, given that we have to, this town would have to notify the health district by next December, if we're going to stay in or not. If we're not going to stay in, we have to figure out what we're gonna do, where we could go, or what we should do. We had some plans that were presented to us, our own. I could talk to other districts, other towns, but what I don't want to do is go through all that and have this board sit here saying, well, we're not going to, you know, frankly, I've got enough to do than to do something that's not going to come around. I'm disappointed. I'm not so sure the promises that were made to this board that services would get better has happened at all. As a matter of fact, I would say they're probably not as good as they were when we were just our own district. But the idea was we'll get bigger. One of the reasons I heard was that if we get more than 75,000 people in the district, there'll be more money from the state. I'd like to see that, where it's known that we would get more, or is that just a fact, or is that just hope? Because if it's not, don't be telling us that we need to hit that 75,000 mark and that it's going to magically give us more money. I had conversations with the director. And my take was that it was acknowledged that there are shortcomings and they're trying to work on this, and that we recognize this. Once the vote was taken by the board, the email that I received was that everything's okay and we're hitting the the average turnaround for every application. But our land use department does not seem to think that it's working so well for them. There's not a lot we can do about it. We have to just figure out what it is we're going to do, or should we think about going to a different district or starting our own. And we can't wait till the last minute. We were strung along the last time, in my opinion, until it was too late in the year to make a move at that time, and the rest of the other municipalities were a little bit leery about making a move that quick, though we did have some financial plans in place. So, I don't know if you want to talk about it, or you want to give me an indication that you want me to start approaching other districts or come up with a plan.
You know, I was pretty outspoken about this issue when we were debating it. I voted in favor of leaving the district, and I still feel that way. The fact that we've continued to go even farther into Sharon, and our those folks that were centralized here in Southbury serving this community are driving that far, coming back. I'm struggling to wrap my head around how that decision was made. I'm disappointed as well. And I think that, you know, it's hard to forget. One of the very first things that we did as an incoming Board of Selectmen is we had this presentation from the district, and there were many reassurances that we're not going anywhere, we're staying here in Southbury, and it just keeps going farther and farther and farther, and I just, you know, that's got to be 40 minutes each way drive time. You know, I think that as our town is growing, and we have so many needs here as it is, I really think that we need to have a presence locally, and I think that perhaps the Housatonic Valley Health District is not the right district for us.
Anybody else want to?
Have we identified a second representative for that board up there yet?
Yes, Jack Kelly from the Board of Finance.
Okay.
He's
so
been appointed by this board.
We have full representation. Good.
Yep.
How long has the new director been on board up there?
I would say 3 or 4 months.
You know, I'm always open to hear about different options that would be better for our town. You know, if you talk about joining other boards, we're pretty limited, because if we're not happy about a group that stretches to Sharon, we're certainly not going to join Torrington. It's even bigger, more widespread. So while I'm open to it, I'm not sure exactly where we're going to end up or where we would go. I think opening our own is going to be significant cost, and it's going to be difficult. I think it's telling that this group couldn't even get a director that had experience. This is her first time being a public health director, if I'm reading her bio correctly. So we know that there's a shortage of sanitarians. We know that there's a shortage of people with this background. It's going to be one of those rock and a hard place things. You don't want to spend a lot of time doing something that's not going to get approved, but it's going to be hard to leave something that admittedly is not working great, on the chance that we can put something together. So it's a tough nut, and I get it. And we certainly deal with the office. I do, at least weekly. What I need is easy enough for me to get myself, so I don't have to deal with some of the application issues that people are having. I think it would be great if the new director came down here and spoke to us and told us what she's doing to improve service and ramp up her staff. The sooner she did that, I think the more quickly we would all know whether it seems plausible that she's going to succeed.
So I had talked with her and made the suggestion, and I expressed to her that I understand the problems of the health district and what they're trying to do. I agree. But it made, to me, absolutely no sense to add Sharon. And if you remember back last year or so, and Sharon was, they had gotten a grant, and they said, no, they're not joining the district, they're just going to report their COVID numbers. Well, I think we were misled. I think the intention was to add them from that day right there. That was the intention. I'm also concerned that this district and the board is adding municipalities that are a gap away from our border, not even frankly, near us. I had a discussion with the director, and I said, wouldn't it make more sense that we have discussions with Newtown, and which would also mean Roxbury and Bridgewater, that would be, joining in right here? Wouldn't that make more sense? And I thought that that was an agreement, and next thing I know, how I found out is that a budget was sent to Dan Colton that included Sharon, Connecticut in it before the budget. And I'm also concerned that, again, Sharon was told that the vote had been taken and they were in, and that the vote had never been taken. So I don't know what's going on. I would be, if it's, we can have the director come in. We've had directors come in here and speak to us from the health department before, and that wasn't much help. And I frankly don't know what to believe when they're coming in here and telling us, including saying that, yes, we recognize there's issues here. I think we know there's issues here. And yet being sent an email after Sharon is in that we have the numbers that show that we're responding to the needs within the state, within the state average. I don't know if that's better than what we had before, but the idea was that our services were going to improve. And I have not seen any improvement. And it's been how long since this forming the district? It's been over 2 years. It's been 2 years. So if the board would like, I can ask the director to come in. And discuss with the board, and we're gonna hear exactly how good it's gonna be, and we heard it the last time, how good it's gonna be, and how it's gonna be better, and this is how we're gonna do it. Maybe we hang on for another year, but pretty soon, this is what it is. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just like, why would they add this? And I expressed that I did not want Sharon added to this district till it's stable. If we were okay and everything, we had our sanitarians, even if it cost $1 more per person per capita, whatever it was, if we had it stabilized, I would say, sure, well, let's see if we can bring another district in and, enhance it. But
So I'm curious, because you're saying that, and I saw the notes or the details that Sharon thought that they were, accepted into the health district and then we're voting on it. But did the health district board actually have a vote?
no, they had not. The minutes of the Sharon, Connecticut Board of Selectmen's meeting, that had to be revised because the dates were wrong. But it says that they were told that the district board had voted to accept them in. That vote had not been taken at that time. It was taken late, I forget how much later that was. So the statement that are in the minutes was not true, and I'm trying to find out who made that statement to the Sharon Board of Selectmen.
Right, but what I'm asking is, has the health district actually now, the board did vote to?
They finally, yes, they took a vote.
did. And our representatives?
Voted in favor.
Voted in favor. And any particular reason why? Or, were they, they must have been, encouraged to vote in favor of it and thought that was okay.
Not by me.
Mm-hmm. So it's not like a surprise. It
was a surprise.
Well, it was a surprise because we got information from a budget that was given to Dan Colton, but it sounds very similar, as far as we have people that represent us that aren't communicating back to us. They voted for, when this came up, you would think that would have been brought back to us.
So if you'd like, I'll have ask the director to come, if that's what the board would like.
And so I was also curious about so now you just brought up another example of, downside of what they've done, approving a pool that sounds like it was done on a sketch. And then we also got a long-winded list of shortcomings that were sent to us. Have they been, as far as like just confirming that, like, is the office in Southbury staffed like it was committed to be? How many people are there? So I almost like, instead of, before she comes and makes a presentation to us or the director, to share this information with them and ask them to at least first confirm that, yes, there's staff, yes, there's support there. Maybe we were talking to a desk clerk and just didn't get the right information up front, but, to put together a little bit of that puzzle first, and then ask them to.
We can ask those questions
Yeah.
of the.
Because right now, to me, it seems like just a bunch of puzzle pieces that are just being put out on the table. And I'd be curious to just hear what their thoughts are on those puzzle pieces. And if we're, paying lower than what some of our neighbors are paying in the cost of a health district, maybe it's that, cost versus quality, comparison and example. If the cost is lower, maybe we, expect the permits to take a little longer. But I'd like to take those, now I see it, I think there's probably a dozen examples of where there's shortcomings, and present that to them and ask them to fill in the blanks and tell us what we should expect.
So that's actually what I was going to say. I think we should have the health director come here, and we should have a conversation with her. Let her make a presentation to us about the district and where it's at and where it's going, that we could then ask questions about and whatever we want to bring up. But before that happens, I don't think it's productive for us to go through a list like this while she's here and she hasn't seen. Like, I think we should ask her to respond to that list. Send her the list. Send her all that information that we have, and ask her to respond to it so we all have it in advance of, what her answers are to these things. And let's, and then we can all, for ourselves individually, evaluate what we think about those answers or not, and we can challenge them if we see fit when she's here, and or not. But I do think we need to give that opportunity and see what she has to say about the various things, and the new ones that came up tonight. So I think we should do that. As to the first question you started with, about whether you should evaluate going to another district, I agree with a lot that's been said. My biggest concern at the end of last year was, it was the end of December, and none of the options were good. Like, we were presented with all bad options. So I was supportive of the idea of leaving if we had a partnership with somebody, or staying, which is what ended up happening. And what I said then, and I agree with now, is we should stay, we should try and work through it, try and fix the issues, but at the same time, we should go on 2 tracks and evaluate what our other options might be. So when we get to December 2023, we know exactly where we are. We know whether this is working, or we know, okay, these are our 3 options, and we can evaluate them, well in advance. So I can't tell you, if you go out and evaluate options, that I'm going to agree with them, because they could be bad options again. But if there's good options there, or something that can provide the services better, the affordable price that has a presence in our town or locally, then I would seriously consider that. I think it depends on what the option ends up being, and where we are with the district at that time. Because if we start the evaluation process now, we're not talking about making a decision for another 6 months. We have 6 months under our belt, and then we have our options, and we have 6 more months of experience, and we can make a decision as to what's best for the town at that point. But I always think, and I said at the end of last year when I made the vote then, let's try and figure out what our next step might be if this doesn't work out next year. So
I agree, and I realized there was, let's get this worked out, what shocked me was adding another town so far away. I mean, it's a 45-minute drive from New Milford. And then what was said to me, well, it's only 30 minutes or whatever from 25, 30 minutes from Washington. Well, the chances that you're leaving Washington as a sanitarian to go to Sharon is pretty small because they don't have as much business. Chances are you'll leave out of your other remote headquarters, which is New Milford. So let's be honest and say it's 45 minutes to get up there, 45 minutes back, an hour to do the inspection. So it's an hour up, hour back, it's 3 hours at a cost of the person and the car, $100 an hour. It's a $300 inspection, which the fee is $200. If you're here, which I was brought to her attention was, if you do here, you can do 3 inspections at $200. That's $600 in 3 hours. And logistically, it didn't make sense to me to bring that. I don't see the value of bringing that town, except that the former health director of Sharon sits on the board for New Milford. So he had left, and I said, well, why can't they just contract to them? It's an hour up, it's gonna be, for us to do your inspection with ours, and be okay too, if they had enough if they had enough people to do the inspections. But what I'm hearing is they don't. It's hard to get people. So did this move benefit the current members of the Housatonic Valley Health District? And I will also gonna say, this is also gonna give another vote, which what New Milford wanted was one vote more than the rest of any other district member. That we saw that. That's a fact. But this will give an alliance with New Milford for that extra vote. So we're being, we have said this is, it keeps, and it's, what's next? Are there gonna be more municipalities between New Milford and Washington up to Kent or Sharon and become further away from us and less ability to impact? I don't know. I'm looking now saying, okay, what is the intent of this district and where are they going? And I'm sure they're gonna tell us no, and I'm sure they're gonna tell you no, but I don't think the staffing down here I don't think that there's much staffing here in Southbury. So I'll ask the director to come to the next board meeting and discuss it, what the district is doing. I just read an email of what they're doing, and I just don't quite understand this, that they're giving free vaccinations to private school children, some private school, because they don't have vaccines or something. And I don't know why our health district is going to a private school. I'm a little curious about that. Okay, so if that's okay, I'll ask her to come to the next board meeting.
Just one point to add, and I'm very much in favor of her coming, and I'm optimistic that we'll have a good dialogue with her. I will say that they do appear to have gotten better about posting their minutes, which was a frustration for us in the past, that we went many, many months that we had no idea what they were doing because their minutes were so far behind. I am looking at minutes on their website now from April 5th, so going back just 2 weeks ago, and I'm just going to read a couple really quick sentences that I think this board should look at. So staff presentations, it says, Joe Kmet stated that the district is 100 times busier from the last meeting. There are also a ton of complaints coming in anywhere from housing to septic failings. We were the Pomperaug Health District, and it served the people of the Pomperaug region. And without any input from us, it became the Housatonic Valley Health District. And I think it's just becoming abundantly clear that it is no longer directed at serving this region. And I'm hoping that can be rectified, but in the meantime, I would very much like to open our options so that we're not in such a tough position that we were in December.
Okay.
So quick question on,
Yeah, John.
just because I had one, I mean, if between now and December and developing the questions, the building that work process of creating or becoming or adding to or joining a different health district, and then just moving forward, we're always gonna, we're not health professionals, we're, what to expect in a bigger group, how to advocate for ourselves. Should we actually be considering, or a Southbury Health Commission or committee, to at least be a group of people who would look into these goals, look into our objectives, look into what we're trying to accomplish, and be able to inform us or help us with that conversation, that decision? So whether it's staying with the current health district, starting our new one, or joining somebody else, it might be,
Do you think
a more dedicated, more professional commission or committee who is more versed in that conversation to be able to give us recommendation versus us researching it?
So do we think the Strategic Planning Commission could also take this on as, do the research and come to the board to, I mean, this is a pretty serious, I mean, I know that there's a lot of things in a strategic plan that are nice and we'd like to keep. But maybe the Strategic Planning Commission could look into whether two alternatives and research on the possibility of restarting our own district or joining with another district. And I think that would be a good thing. It's, let's see if we can get the strategic planning, if they could take that on.
They're going to be here at our next meeting?
Possibly.
Okay.
I mean, I thought they'd be here, sooner, but John has been getting it all together and making it right, so we know what we were looking at, what's been done, what's been accomplished, and and then, of course, yes, where are we gonna go? I mean, what's next? And I think these two things are strategically, long-term strategic planning for this time. I just want to say this. We always look at we're always looking at the money, yes. We always look at what's the least, what's the best option. But government is not always about the cheapest option. We want good officers, so we pay them fair and decent so we can attract them. We have economic development to think about. We also have issues that if something is missed in the health department, it creates problems in our land use department, and then it creates problems for our citizens. So whether it's $10.20 per capita, or if with 20,000 people in our population, if it was $1 a person more, another $20,000, what's the term? It won't even move the needle. But if we can't get the service, that we need to move our economic development, our restaurants, our businesses, our citizens forward, if it costs more money, is it worth the value to cost more money? And, and that's my concern, is if we're going to add more towns and we have to add more head count, is the 9,000, for round figures, let's say 10 of Sharon, I think it's less than 10,000 people. At 10, is the money collected going to cover the additional expense for staffing to service them? I don't always, I find that hard to believe, because one person with benefits costs quite a bit of money.
And that's why I was suggesting whether it's whether it's strategic planning or a different commission or a different committee that would be able to put that package together, sink their teeth into it, and, and it's not about, are we joining another or starting our own, or are we staying where we are and just making sure that we get what was committed to it. But somebody who can keep their finger on that pulse.
Well, if you remember, there was a plan put together. There was a plan put together that showed the financial plan to go on our own. So there is some financial plan together for that. So when you're communicating with John as a liaison, if you could also talk to him about when he comes in, that this is another thing we're considering tasking them with as a liaison. Keep me in the loop on that.
Yep.
Justin, please.
Will do.
On the email chains. And we'll listen to, we'll see what happens. Okay. First Selectmen's report.
Point of order.
We added Pierce Hollow.
Added agenda
Oh,
item.
I checked it off, sorry. Up next is Pierce Hollow discussion. I'll open it up to the board.
So I would just start by saying, as Jason did, thanks to the group for all they've done. 10 years is a long time to push on a rock and get somewhere, but not where you want to go. Just a quick anecdote. Yesterday, our firm listed a property in Heritage Village for a gentleman. He had been #1 on the list to get into our existing senior housing stock for 8 months. Once he got to #1, he had another 8 months that he had to wait to get in. So the need is acute. And when you look at the numbers, I think, we have something like 130 age-restricted affordable housing units. But for non-age restricted, we really have about the 8 that Kevin Bennett has created in the last 2 years. And I understand he's bringing a couple more to the table. So these 100% affordable projects, whether they're for seniors or multi-gen, are tremendously more impactful in getting us towards that 10% number, which will, allow us to control our zoning again. I mean, to me, that's the goal, to get to the 10%. It's not that we want all these apartments necessarily, but it gives us back control, and even moving our needle up a couple percentage points will allow us to pause this kind of development for a while so the town could absorb it a little bit at once. Because let's be honest, adding 800 apartments that are affordable in any amount of time is a little scary. But we do have to get started. This is the perfect location. And if all this body has to do is change some language from senior to multi-generational, I say, let's do it tonight and get going.
The affordable housing, I mean, it's clearly a task that's needed. We'll have others here controlling our destiny if we don't act. And it's just the right thing to do. So I would be in agreement with everything Justin said.
Anybody? Holly?
I have a lot of questions, I think, that would still come. So there's information that I would want to better understand. And one of the questions that I probably poorly worded, but asking how many, what are the restrictions on how many seniors can be there? Or does the state require that you have a certain amount of every age bracket? And then when it comes to school-age children, would those kids wind up in Gainfield? What's the capacity? There's just a lot of questions that are just new, because this is now a new conversation. This town is very well prepared to support a senior population, but there's just a lot of new questions when it comes to multi-generational, with what other impacts are there? And I just don't know the answers to those questions, and I'm looking forward to learning the answers to those questions before I just don't have a position on it. I will say one thing that I do very much have a position on, and I kind of found, it's kind of funny when public comment happens. we follow kind of very strict rules of order, right? We don't speak during that period, and no matter what we're kind of thinking, this is the public's opportunity to speak. For anybody, it's kind of something we don't really talk very personally up here, but for anybody who doesn't know, there is no disposable income requirement to be served on the Board of Selectmen. And I don't know why there might be some sort of assumption that any of us live in any sort of privilege or are not familiar with how expensive it can be to live here in this town. Anybody who may not know me, I'm a single mother. I work extraordinarily hard to be able to pay my mortgage alone. And the last 10 years have been extraordinarily difficult. When I was a newly single mom with a baby, I know exactly what it's like to have my electric shut off at Christmas. So this is not lost on this board. And the implication that somehow we are removed from that is very disappointing. So I'm very much looking forward to learning more information. But that being said, any assumption that the members of this board do not live amongst the general community or not a part of it would be mistaken.
Jason?
So, again, I'll echo what I said before and thank the Pierce Hollow Village folks for all the work they've done over the course of many years. This has been a project that many in the town, including myself, have strongly supported for a very long time. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people explaining the project, explaining why it's necessary, explaining why it's needed, explaining how this is a great location for it, and all of those things. Which leads me to my sole concern about taking any action tonight is that this is now a different sort of discussion and a different rationale that the public has had nobody knows we're talking about this tonight. All they know is we're talking about Pierce Hollow Village. So based on that, I think this needs to be a public discussion. The public needs to be involved in the discussion. We need to tell the public what's being determined, what's being proposed, what we're being asked to do, see what the public get their comments on that. I think it's a very important part of the process. When this happened, it's 10 years ago now, right? 2013. My understanding is this went through a number of bodies, and Lainey could correct me if I'm wrong with her nodding, but we went to the Zoning Commission and the Planning Commission and the Selectmen, and then lobbied the legislature, and Arthur, Representative O'Neill, proposed legislation, which I think was changed once, whatever, and it's that legislation that we're talking about here that needs to be changed. We can't change it. The legislature has to change it, and it says that this property will be given to the town of Southbury. It has to be used for affordable senior housing, or senior housing. I think it just says senior housing. And then I think the change in legislation at one point in time had to do with the fact that we could lease it to an entity that could do that, which would have been Pierce Hollow Village. So that's sort of what we're talking about. Like that's the legislation needs to change if this project were to proceed in this manner. But I think we need to know more about the project and what's being proposed, and we need to involve the public in the dialogue and let them know what's being discussed. And perhaps it's appropriate for planning to chime in or whatnot as well. So those are just sort of some thoughts in my mind as we're sitting here now. On the merits, like we've already as a town identified this parcel as appropriate for affordable housing of some nature, right? Like it's got all the things you need to make it easier for development of this nature. We've been focused on seniors, and we've been developing and presenting and arguing the rationale for that approach. And this is a big pivot. So I don't think we should take it lightly. I think we should take it seriously, and we should evaluate it, and we should act on it. We shouldn't let it sit for months. But I would be concerned about jumping on it right now for those reasons.
So I, of course, have always spoken in favor of the elderly, senior housing project. One of my concerns has always been that, and mostly is that a couple moves into Heritage Village, husband and wife, and we've always heard, I'm sure you hear the stories in your business. Something happens, for whatever reason, husbands don't make it as long as the wives. It's a statistical probability, it's there. And then they're left with a problem with Social Security, and it's difficult for them. So I look at this as my aunt lived in Grace Meadows. Her husband had passed away, and it worked out quite well for her. And that was important to me to protect, especially seeing elderly women experiencing this. And obviously at the village, that's where a lot of that came from Heritage Village. We've got to be careful about this. What I want to, and I hate to be the Debbie Downer or the voice of reason, and then frankly, political attacks come, but we have to talk about this. And my concerns when you talk about multi-generational, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom, you're talking about low-income housing. You're not talking about affordable housing here. You are talking about low-income housing and subsidized low-income housing. When you add your bedrooms on, okay, what you're talking about is increasing the school population. If you add however many units they come up with, what's the impact going to be to our schools? And we should look, because this has happened in Brookfield, up by the Four Corners, and we should look at what there is low-income, multi-generational housing up there. I'm also have stated this time and again with affordable housing. I do not like the stigma that happens for people when they live in, that's a low-income housing there. Where the where the affordable housing that's being built, for better or for worse, when they bring in their 830G, they are dispersed inside of within an apartment complex. You have no idea. It's just an apartment complex that has an 830G component at a 30%, I think it is the requirement. So there's a lot of social issues that are of a concern to me about what that would mean if you had a dedicated affordable housing project. As far as the town running a project of this magnitude, we are ill-equipped to do that. This is a massive project with limited, I would say probably limited money for less than stellar materials. You really have to be careful here to figure out what you have, what it's going to mean. You really need to study this out. Again, not here tonight, but we really have to take a look at this. I know everybody's well-meaning, and I understand that, but part of our job is to protect the citizens who we represent right now that have come to this town for whatever reason, for this lifestyle, for this value. And I don't know how the residents of this town would feel about having, this is not, what you're talking about is subsidized low-income housing. That's what, this is what this is. It's not affordable, not 830G.
I think, and I'm just listening to what Sharon has forwarded me in conversations we've had and looking at her website, you're saying two things that I'm hearing, and I'm hearing this different from the affordable housing group that's in Southbury. One is I just heard you say less than stellar materials, and the other word that keeps coming up is low income. What I've heard and what I was just agreeing with Justin is it is good quality, well-designed projects that are affordable housing. And that affordable housing is, and we do need to educate yourself. It's $102,000 is a median income. 80% of that is about $80,000. To live in that space, you're making $80,000. You're a first-year police officer. You're a first-year student, teacher. You're somebody who's living in this community, making good money, but not money that can afford a $500,000, $600,000, $800,000 billion home that's here in Connecticut, but affords something that is 30% of your income when you're making $80,000. That's affordable housing.
If it's 830G affordable housing, yes. We need, and again, this is why.
I don't want to put words into anybody else's, what we're talking about is affordable housing.
And it would have to be subsidized, and what this is not affordable housing. What you're talking about is low-income subsidized housing, because you have to go through the USDA. What I'm saying here, John, is, and you're not listening, we need to look at this carefully. We can't just make a move here today. And I said when I first talked about this, I know there's going to be people say, well, look what he's saying. What I'm saying is we need to look into this correctly, vet it out, understand what it really is, what it will take to do. As far as the 1.5 million that was brought to this project, specifically that was brought through the ARPA funds for elderly senior housing to get them started, because the money wasn't coming and they needed to clean it up. If this project is to go this new direction for whatever reason, the money would be there. This money will have to be reappropriated through the ARPA back in and make a recommendation, because it has to be spent within a certain number of years and we have to get it reappropriated. But the idea was to get them to start to get money, and that evidently hasn't happened. So in the spirit of what we were using that money for, we can't just arbitrarily decide that let's do it for a subsidized housing. We really have to, we're probably going to have to go back into the ARPA money and be redistributed. And more than likely, there will be money, if this project goes forward, there will be money for the cleanup. That the town doesn't have to take their own money out to do that. So just understand that also.
And so, I mean, what I was agreeing with Justin, I don't think that I, would be sitting here right now saying, yep, we're all in, write the check, let's go. I think what, at least in my opinion, it would be what my knowledge of it is, and clearly we all need to learn a little bit more and understand it 100%. But if it's what we're hearing, which is, that there is state and federal funding for it, that it's affordable housing, that it's working people coming to work in our town. It's just something that what I'm publicly saying is, and I think it's what we're asking, is that, yeah, we would support that kind of idea, but we need to hear the details. We need to know what we're in for. We need to know what is the particular detail of moving that $1.5 million from one project, which was clearly, and we know what we're talking about. It was tagged for, senior housing, whether it was loaded income senior housing or, low income senior housing or affordable senior housing. We all know what that word senior housing means. It means you didn't bring any kids with you. So, clearly we're changing the image of this project to be from seniors to families. So it does have different demographics, and we do need to hear more about that and see what those counts are. And is the property still, appropriate for that use? And I think what I'm asking is just like, yeah, we're going to open our eyes and move this ahead. Because the one thing I heard tonight, and I was just, because I've always been kind of a little, critical of Pierce Hollow and taking 10 years. So what I'm hearing now is, or at least today, and we'll talk more about it, is that this has not been moving forward for 8 years. For 8 years, we knew that the federal government or the state government is not, supporting senior developments. So for 8 years, we've kind of just been sitting, not doing much of anything.
Hope rings eternal. I think we were.
Yeah.
There's been
So hopefully, and I'm just like,
just
hopefully we're encouraged to look forward.
Just to correct that a little bit, because these folks have been working hard continuously for the 10-year period, and there have been spots where we've tried. Our board tried to advocate and lobby Department of Housing.
Met with the commissioner?
I think it was 16, 17, somewhere around there. We drafted letters, motions, had meetings, because at that time, there was an opportunity, and then the state had this scoring system, and, we didn't have, mass transit, and I forget some of the multi-generational, there was the various things that needed to be checked off, and this project couldn't check it off. And the state, the federal funds at that time were available, but in order to get to the federal funds, you needed the state approval, and the state, which passed legislation to approve this project, which was all on board with this project, would not say yes. And there was lots of activity around that. There's been more since then, and it's just been, when they came to see us with the ARPA meetings, they're still working with consultants and working with the feds, and the reason why we allocated this 1.5 million is because there was an opportunity. There was, the federal government was going to be opening up some more funds, and we wanted to do what we could to try and put some money there so that maybe the project would look viable, and maybe it would be attractive, and maybe the federal government would step in. So I just, these folks have worked really hard as a nonprofit for many years, so I just think we should be careful when talking about their efforts during that time, because this has really been, something that they care deeply about, and in turn have made this town care deeply about, and made this town advocate for over the course of many years. And unfortunately, we are where we are.
So I think we'll have more discussions. I mean, this is just the beginning. I look at this as a whole new project presentation. This is a whole new start to what, from ground zero, almost from ground zero again. I mean, we have some of the work done, but we're gonna have to look at this carefully. And I understand the enthusiasm of the project, but I think we also, my point, John, is saying is, you're really gonna have to make sure we know what we're doing. I mean, certainly, I don't expect anybody really expected a vote here tonight. I think, Justin, you said, I think we should move forward now, and I would say that's just enthusiasm we want to show. But, and as I said, I qualified it. My job is to say, okay, wait a minute, let's look at the whole picture and what this involves and what it's going to take. And again, if a private company were to come in that has done project management of this magnitude and was coming forward with this project and could, I mean, we all know what it takes to run large projects. You would have to have a full-time engineer, and it's difficult enough to get like a library built or something, let alone something of this size. I don't think the town is really, some municipalities and cities have done these things before, but it's certainly not, it's never been in our wheelhouse. Justin, you look like
I don't think they're asking us to play that role. I mean, they did mention that they're working with David Berto, and that's his specialty, and I believe his firm is the one that manages Grace Meadows for us.
Yes.
So I don't think anybody's asking the town to manage these projects when they're finished. They're already done by other people. They're done by the people that we're talking to. So I think, yeah, we need more information. Let's make it all completely accurate, and make decisions based on what we have. And this is a guy who, again, I've met, and they're putting projects up every year. They're quality builds. They're quality builds. We're not talking about putting up a shanty town up there. So yeah, by all means, let's get more information. Let's work on it, and let's help these people push it forward.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to look at things. Even, I do know in Brookfield, there's up at the Four Corners, oddly, I think it's 4 stories and there's no elevator, or 3 stories. I mean, there's no elevator, which is odd. That's my understanding. I can't confirm that. And I also understand that there's a lot of calls for service in those buildings because of whatever reason. There's a lot of calls for service. So when we look at something like this, and if you're going to want to move forward, we have to look at everything, including, would this mean having to increase our, would this mean we would have to increase the staff, the police department, police officers? Second thing is, okay, they bring, if this is done this way, do they pay any taxes, or is it just an expense? And is that something that the town, you know, if there's no property tax on it, and there's no, you know, and it's an expense, and we have to have another officer, we have to look at this carefully before we get, you know, before we make a decision. It's gonna take some time to get that together. This may be another, depending on how much time the strategic planning people have, that they could look into this and help understand it to whatever degree we can. Are we okay with this now?
I just have a question, just because I just don't know the process. When they would present this type of information to us, would they have historical information on similar builds? How many, let's say, for example, like my first question was regarding, I'm assuming this kids in that area would go to Gainfield because of the region of the town that they're in. How would we, like, who would bring us this information, and how would all of that data be put together? Like, how many children will we expect? Do we involve the board? Like, what is the capacity? I just don't know the answers to those questions, and there's a lot of questions that I think I would just have to have a better understanding of what the long-term impact would be.
I think we'd have to get a bunch of questions together of what it is and have people do research. Like with the police study, gather the facts and the information. What was, like with the police study, what was your budget before and what was it after? What were the financial, what did you experience in your emergency services once this was done? So that you can map the whole thing out and get as much information as you can. That's, I think, would be the approach. I really don't, we just had this the other day.
So when you do an impact statement for a property in development like this, I mean, the developer would be responsible to bring to us basically an overview of what this project is going to look like and what it's going to bring to the table and how it's going to impact the community. So that you would see how many residents are going to be there, how many students are going to be there, what busing, what policing, what services are going to be needed. And I know that they're interested in helping and doing this work. I would almost take that one step further, and because I think we need the education here, because it sounds like we're not. I mean, I would like to know when we talk about a 10% goal, and what does that mean, and what does it look like as far as affordable housing in our community? So if we actually approached that 10% threshold, what does it look like? What does that overall development look like, and where is it throughout the town? So not only what does this project bring to the town, but what does the rest of it do? And if we don't act, and somebody comes in and just builds one of these 4-story, big, huge apartment complexes right off the highway, what does that impact for not acting?
I'll just admit my own ignorance here, but does this build preclude a developer from doing something on private land? And I guess I just don't know does that stop that?
Not till you hit your 10%.
Understood. And then I'm very interested to understand more about, the difference between affordable housing and low-income housing. And again, this is not my wheelhouse, and I'm certainly open to understanding those things. When you use terms like $80,000, and I think about myself 10 years ago with a toddler and a newborn, those are numbers that are real life here in town. So I'm very open and curious about what those differences are. I'm just not ready to make any sort of decisions with the lack of information that I have right now, but I want to better understand it.
I think that's where we could challenge
between
Sharon and Pierce Hollow to bring us some of that information, even possibly, present those answers and that detail. Maybe even add to the presentation that was brought here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking, it's a big change from, I think Grace Meadows is mostly one bedroom, all one bedroom. Now you're talking about taking the same number of units and adding 2 to 3 bedrooms. And that's 2 to 3 times the size of what was going to be, what was being proposed or what would be in there. I mean, I guess it doesn't, it doesn't necessarily have to be as big as this concept. It could be, I don't know. But I'm just saying,
Well, the footprint might not fit. If that was 85 one-bedroom units, and now they're gonna be 2 or 3 bedroom units, they're gonna be less units. So we would need to see a redraw, we would need to see new numbers. I mean, there's a lot of detail, but somebody who's seen affordable housing projects be built and whose kids grew up with the families that live there, and they were school teachers, they were nurses, they were police officers, they were people you were neighbors with. They could just afford to live there.
well, we certainly can, it'll be a lot to think about and a lot of information to get, and we'll see what happens. All right, anything else? Jason looks like he's thinking. I don't want to move forward too quickly.
No, that's fine. So are we asking them to gather information and come back and present to us? Or are we, as an initial step, or are we doing something else as an initial step?
I mean, I don't know,
What we think the
I
next
would have
steps
to,
are.
I'm not sure that the,
I'm not sure what the next steps are.
I'm
just
not
because
sure
There's a
if-
lot of information that we need, but
I think clearly hearing
know if
what
they
we've
have
said,
the-
and I think that they now know what they need to present to us, I'm assuming, just because they've heard a lot of comments here and a lot of questions and a lot of open mic. And I think what we should do is invite them back to make a detailed presentation on what this site would look like.
yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. I just, and frankly, I don't know how much more they can put in.
May I speak?
Yeah, please.
Without reasonably positive outlook that you presented today, with good questions, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to answer yours, but quite honestly, I expected this kind of response. So I've put in so much time on this. For 4 years, Joel and I were putting in 40 hours a week. All volunteer. Okay, enough.
I mean, I think this board feels that we at least owe you that. You know?
What, your question's been great. I have not looked at the application for the Department of Housing in 18 months.
So if you could do that.
We can get the bulk of the information you want pretty quickly. This was to show you the level, the beauty of what could have been. There is no way that we're going to have 180 units, just as you said. If there are more bedrooms,
Less units.
we only have 45 acres, and there's a specific number of residences can be put in, 0.24 resident apartment per acre. So it would be scaled down by numbers. It would also be scaled down because we're only going 2 stories high with an elevator. And that was all part of previous planning. And we know that that's what would fit on that property and not be seen from the road. And there's so much that we've already done on this, but there's so much that we'd have to do all over again with a different view. And whether we come up with whether we have the money to come up with another conceptual drawing, I don't know. But to know how many apartments would be in a unit and where we'd anticipate the money from and how many units would be, what the ratios would have to be. If anybody tells us that it has to be so, it's probably the application process that would tell us the number of different bedrooms that would give us the right point count. And the reason that we went back to have the legislation at state level reformatted for us was so that we could go for LIHTC funding. And there isn't a funding source out there that we haven't approached one way or another. The place we've really fallen down is any marketing in the community.
So I think we're a little ahead of a conceptual drawing till we,
Well, we can come back with all the answers to the questions that I was able to scribble down. If you have others, or if you want to make sure that I answer a question, I'd love to have the questions. And it just so happens that I have an email you can send. We want to, if there's a chance, we'd like to get this built in my lifetime. Holly, for your information, when we started, Justin may remember this, when we started this, 5 years, I had people living in there. No doubt. Motherhood and apple pie, for crying out loud. Boy, did the state,
Yeah.
state change things on us. Okay. Mhm. Well, I thought I had a.
you can send it to me, I'll get it out to them.
Okay, that'll be great.
That'll be
Well,
just-
you have my email on the letter that I sent you.
Okay.
Very good.
But any question you have, I'd love to have it so we can address it, even if it's, we're still trying to find that information out. And we'll come back. And this would be quality built. This would be safe, and this would be beautiful, not sketchy. Never. Remember, I'm gonna be looking down on this. And I'm gonna want it to look good.
I'm just, I hope you don't have remorse. And if for some reason, again, I know you've done this a long time, and this is a lot to ask to go back and start again, and it's a lot of work, and
If at some point, we are looking to work cooperatively, not cooperatively, I've lost the word now. Word retrieval goes with age. Working with affordable housing, and among us, their views are not our views. But I think that since we all want people who need to be housed here in town, housed, I think we can come up with something that's good for the town.
okay,
And good for people who need it. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thanks, Lenny.
You said good words.
And now we can go to the Selectmen's report. Senior Center, had coffee with the first Selectman. That hasn't happened in a while, and, COVID has put a lot of things, and we're getting back into it. This past Tuesday, April 18th, I had the pleasure of having coffee and conversation with some of our Senior Center members. Our Southbury senior population is a well-respected group in our town. I enjoyed connecting with them to listen to their opinions, any needs they may have, and what's going on in their lives. To those who attended, thank you for sharing your time with me. Arbor Day celebration, this year's Arbor Day is Friday, April 28th. The town crew will be planting a new oak tree at Settlers Park to replace the dying Settlers oak. There will be a ceremony prior to the planting at 10 a.m., where the Arbor Day proclamation, the town's newly received 2022 Tree City USA Award, will be read. April 23rd, Sunday, 1 till 4, Public Safety Day. Town of Southbury will hold a Public Safety Day at the Center Firehouse. This indoor-outdoor event features the rare opportunity for residents in town and the region to meet and interact with Southbury's first responders. It's going to be fun for the entire family, offering food, demonstrations, and education. I recommend you stop by and support our public safety officials. I hear they're going to have a simulated smoke room and other interesting interactive activities. I will pass on the smoke room. I've been in the real thing. Don't need to go back into the smoke room. Planning and Zoning Commission, 17 members of our land use staff and Planning and Zoning Commissions attended the Connecticut Federation of Planning and Zoning Agencies 75th Annual Conference, where they received continuing education, networking opportunities, and thank you to the dedicated employees and town volunteers who attended. I think the chair of the commission got an award, Rich Tierdo, but it's nice to see that our commissions are taking an active role with these. Any questions? Reports from liaisons. Justin?
Economic Development met last night. Not a ton of new developments from the commission per se, but the director did update us about all the things going on in town, which includes Monty's Pub getting closer. So I think that's, I know some people are excited about that about town, and I am too. IPOC's next meeting will be May 17th. And the Strategic Plan Commission did meet last week. I was on Easter break, unable to attend, but they discussed, coming here to see us is one of the things that was discussed last week. So we'll hear from them soon, directly.
Okay,
That's it.
Jason?
Let's see. Library met last week. I was away, but I can report that the Friends are having their annual book sale May 4th to 8th. They're continuing their strategic planning process, and I think their planning group might have a presentation at the next meeting. And on May 13th, the library is going to be having an open house. It's from 11 to 3, and they're planning various events that day, so should have more information on that after their next meeting. LEPC didn't meet. EMS meets next week. Police Study Committee has been continuing its meeting with various departments and is meeting Monday night to talk about starting to plan a draft report. And if I may, I'd like to acknowledge another longtime Southbury public servant. Our former tax collector and probate judge turns 90 today. So I'd like to wish Mary Kay Flaherty happy 90th birthday.
Happy birthday.
Very nice. John?
The only group that met under my liaison was the Parks and Rec, met last week. They discussed repurposing an area that was utilized for the bocce and shuffleboard. Sorry, my mic's not on there. Bocce and shuffleboard court into a volleyball court. There was discussion, to see how that generates additional use. The project's in addition to the extension of the, this is a project in addition to the extension of the adjoining pickleball construction, and there's a new tennis court reservation procedure that was shared with the commission, because they're anticipating that the pickleball court and the work in that area will have a large following, and they are prepared for that patronage. There's an engineering feasibility study that will be done, the structural integrity of the barn or the bathhouse at the community park to discover what repairs might be required to retain that building. And then there was a discussion about the boat launch and the new dock that they are waiting on the vendor to deliver. So we heard a little bit about that earlier. And then 2 events that were just part of the conversation. Was there a detailed conversation of art in the park, May 6th. And then, of course, the Memorial Day Parade coming up at the picnic on May 29th. And there's a call for volunteers for the yearly outdoor concert series. The dates of the concerts are July 10, 17, 24th, and 31st. And then there was a little bit of a conversation about the community garden and his volunteers and the vegetables and fruits that are grown there on the plots that can be donated to local food pantries. And to learn more about that, take a look at the Town Parks and Rec page website, and there's some information about the community gardens there.
Okay.
The other 2 committees did not meet since we met last.
Selectman Kuhn is not here. Holly?
So the Board of Ed did have a meeting, I believe it was on the 3rd. Obviously, the big thing is the school budget needs to go to a referendum. Probably the most important thing that I'll relay is that the referendum day is May 3rd. Of course, folks need to be registered to vote. If they're not in town for May 3rd, they can vote via an absentee ballot and head to the Southbury Town website to get their absentee ballot should they need it. And polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And that'll be at the Firehouse and at Shepherdson Community Center
Okay.
over in Middlebury.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.